Welcome to the 2014 Infrastructure Design Suite Conceptual Planning Demonstration. My name is Brian Allen, and we'll be covering a few of the products inside of the Infrastructure Design Suite. And those products are Map 3D. We'll be looking at some of the organization that we can use from some of the GIS information, sorting that information out, then creating data from that information. Maybe it's something from a land planner, a sketch, and we want to turn that into some shape files or some other kind of data that we can use either inside of InfraWorks or Civil 3D or possibly even Navisworks. So once we have some of that map, we will take it into InfraWorks, then eventually into Civil 3D and Navisworks.
All right, so what I have open here is Map 3D 2014, and what we're going to do is to lay out some of the conceptual design information that we may have. It can be from napkin sketches, if you will, and maybe even some land plans that are printed from maybe a land planner or something like that, and you're going to bring in to try to model and stylize some things. So take a look at that information that we have here. Here's the concept plan from the land planners, and it's just a bitmap file. It doesn't have any correlation information into it, but we're going to insert it into our map and get it lined up to where we need to on the site, so we can basically just, in a lack of a better term, just trace over it to get our layout started. On the flip side of that, we have the concept napkin sketch, if you will. So we'll get this also lined up in our drawing in the correct location, so we can use this for layout too. All right, so inside a map, I also have a part of the infrastructure design suite. I have raster tools. So I'm going to insert a plan or insert an image here using the map insert first. So the concept napkin is going to be the first one. And since it doesn't have any correlation information, I'm just going to pick some arbitrary point and some arbitrary scale for now because I don't know any of that stuff. So now, to get it everything lined up, now is the time I'm going to use some of the raster tools, and I'm going to just match the points here. So what I can do is use the match points. So what's the first source? I'm just going to use this point here for the destination point. It's going to be the intersection of this road, and my second point is going to be the intersection of that on the image over to the intersection of the corresponding road. So you can see that it's now lined up and it's rotated a little bit. So maybe we want to take it and take the draw order, send it to back so we can see our plan on top of it. So since we have that image there lined up where it is, so if anybody else on a design team is not doesn't really know raster tools or anything like that, what we can do with this is export this image out, and let's go take it, let's say back to our site development here. Let's go into our sketches, and what we'll do is we'll change this to a we can change it to a TIFF here, and we're also going to do an uncompressed encoding tiled, and we'll include the world file. So now if it's going to be used by anyone else, next time they use it, they won't have to do any of this insert scale stuff. It already have this world file associated with it for the correlation. Let's go ahead and save that out. So we don't need that image anymore. So I'm just going to go ahead and erase it, and we're going to get prompted for a raster design. You got to detach. I'm going to hit yes. So now that we have that image in there or completed, now let's go in and insert the other image, that concept layout from the land planner. So here is the land plan there from the bitmap. Same type thing. I don't really know any locations for this, so I'm just going to do a arbitrary insertion and scale for that. So this time I'm going to just line up all the points off of the intersection of each one of these roads, and let's see how that's going to work. So for this, for the raster tools, I'm going to use rubber sheet. And rubber sheet, if you haven't heard of that term, it's kind of like taking pizza dough and stretching it to form over an area that you want it to form over. So I'm going to use the triangular method. Source point is going to be the corners to the intersections. Take this over and each one. Let's line that up. So there's the four source points. Just press enter there. There's the 4 points. Hit OK. we should see things that are lined up there, and we could again take this image and send it to the back so we can see any of the layouts on top of that, so you can see a little bit of it there. So since we have this image done, now we can also export this out, and we'll just call this the Concept2 TIFF, and we'll go through and do the same settings that we did last time, tiled, give it a world file, so that way we can use this in any other application type thing. So going back and looking at our image now you can see that we've got the TIFF files here with the world files, with the concept plan and the napkin sketch. So just to show you how to use that, space here and connect. So here you can see we've got the raster image or surface, so we can take this raster image and connect to it. So we can connect to it a couple different ways, just by using a folder and connect to everything, or just using the individual files here. So here is the TIFF here. So I'll connect to the TIFF first for that napkin sketch. So I'll just call this napkin sketch. Connect to it. You'll see that, let me drag this out to the side so we can see a little bit more what's going on here. So it automatically sees the coordinate system here. Go ahead and add that to map, and you'll see that this image is now applied there, and we have the layer for that image there as well, so we can turn that off and on using the map tools there. You can also select it and send that to the back. Go connect to the other image. Let's call this land plan, which should be the concept plan. Add that to the map, and you'll see that this will add another layer there, and we have that image. So we have both images connected. Alright, so this next step in Map 3D, we may have some other information to our disposal, maybe some of the GIS information that you already have existing. That could be some hydrologic information, maybe rivers and streams, maybe some water and sewer lines, maybe some political boundaries, anything like that you may have. So you can take that and dump it into Map here and start conceptualizing, see and realize all these different constraints that you may have for a site. So we can look at some of these shape files here. I'm just going to go into shape files. There's a lot of different ones that I have in here from GIS. I'm just looking at some of the shape files here. So it may be some things like some maybe some roads, wetlands, maybe some rail lines, some easements, city annex. And since this is all based off the coordinate system, all I have to do is just drag and drop this into the drawing, and everything's stylized. You'll see all the layers that are here. If there's things about the colors that you don't like, you can change them. Like specifically, if you don't like the way that those wetlands look, you can double click on it and open up the style editor palette and just go in and change the style for that. So there's that color. It's like changing the layer color almost. So we can just go in and change it. Maybe if we want that to be a blue, we can apply that there. And now look at our drawing. Now our wetlands are blue. If we don't want to see the wetlands, we can turn those off. And also, if we want to show the things on top of that, we can just take this whole layer and drag it down below these other items. So that way, if you want to see that on top of or below, you can reorder and see things as you need to there. All right, so what about the existing topography? So I'm going to turn off all these other layers that we have here just to make everything a little bit clearer, and connect to some other data that we may have, and we can do the raster image or surface connection. So this time I'm just going to go ahead and call this DEM. So we do have a DEM file that I can connect to. That's just going out here to our surface folder. There's the DEM there. Go connect to that, and you'll see that we can combine it to the drawing by adding to map. So there is our DEM We can take this and also stylize it based off of a theme if we want to go to a theme and say that its height or its elevation. We can do equal spots or equal ranges for that by using a palette here, USGS DEM palette. We'll apply that to all those different ranges there. So now we've got the ranges and elevations that are shown over here. And what about connecting to aerials? We can connect to some other aerials as well. This time I'm going to connect to a folder. Here you'll see all the TIFFs that we have in that folder we can connect to, but what I also need to do is define the coordinate system for those, because they do have a world file, but we have to tell this what coordinate system to go into. So I just double click that, click on override there and edit. And remember, this is all the North Dakota 83-NF, the state plane north zone. So they'll all add there. So I'm going to combine it into one layer, so they're not separate images like we had those other ones before. So aerials, now just hit add to map. It may take it a second to add all those to the map here. So there's the aerial. Notice that all of them are on one layer. So now we can conceptualize some things here by going into 3D. Take it a second to go in and realize that. So being this is North Dakota, it's fairly flat, so you may want to do some vertical exaggeration here. When you change that, it may go off and up into space. So now if we take and pan this around, you'll see that we've got that gradient change going off into the site there. So we'll just go back to 2D here. Here in this drawing in Map 3D, you see that we have the layout that was somewhat based off the conceptual land plan from the land planner. We look at that image down below, you see it's roughly the same kind of layout, but with some different aspects to it. Some design alternatives, but pretty much the same layout. So now, from this step, you may be ready to take this into InfraWorks to model. So how we'll do that is we'll just create our own shape files, because it's easier to work with the shape files and connect to those and stylize them more efficiently into InfraWorks. So from that, I've already got another file that's ready to go. So it's creating these layouts and the shapes. So basically, you just want to make sure you have closed polylines for that. So how we'll do that is going out to the map export tool. So where do we want to place this? So we're going to put it into the site development here for the shape files. So all the proposed stuff I'm keeping over here, so I'm just calling it new zoning. How about that? So these are different type zoning areas that we're going to have for our plan. So we have a lot of residential in there. We've got some commercial, industrial, some hospital areas. To export this information out, we're going to create a new shapefile again. The object type is going to be polygons. I'm going to select that manually and go over to data. What attributes do I want to apply over? So each one of those different types of land zones, I have it defined by the layer. So that's how we're going to stylize things, is by the layer. So the residential's on the residential layer, commercial's on the commercial layer, and so forth. So now that's there, I also want to do some other, maybe if you want to know the area for each one of those. And I'm just going to treat closed polylines as polygons. So you see that we've got 20 items selected, so we hit OK. So now if we wanted to make us a quick plan in here, like a zoning map or a land use map. So again, my coordinate system is set, so I could take that shapefile that we just created, new zoning, and just drag and drop it into here. You see that everything is looks like a hatch, if you will, but we can go in here to our map layers and stylize it based off of a palette. So based off of the layer, that's the different layers there. So click on that, give it a palette, and then give it probably land use. So based off of that, so you see the alternatives, commercial, community, some hospitals, mixed use, all these different areas. They're already stylized based off their different land use patterns that are here.
All right, so now I'm in InfraWorks 2014 Release 2, and I'm going to create a new model so we can go ahead and conceptualize some of our land plan based off the GIS stuff that we just created from Map 3D. So I'm going to start off creating a new model, path here. So define the model extent based off of one of the sketches, Concept 2 TIFF that we've got there. So it will ask us what the coordinate system is. So remember, this is the North Dakota E3NF. So we'll go ahead and click OK for that, and it'll take it a second to create the model. The base model is created here. It just looks like a flat gray area. So now we can start connecting to our data. And this is how we can connect to the different types of data we have from 3D models, AutoCAD drawings, AutoCAD IMX file, GMLs, LinuxMLs, point clouds, rasters, Revit files, um, AutoCAD SDFs, and shapefiles and SQL files. I'm just going to start by dragging and dropping some of the information in that we have, even from the surfaces. So I can start off with the surface, just drag and drop the XML surface that I have. Again, it will need to be configured for each one of these. So what is the coordinate system? It is the ND83NF. So I'm going to close and refresh it. And you can see the surface that's here. Zoom in a little bit and pan around so you can see the surface that's there. So I can also connect to the other information that we have, maybe the aerials. So I can go click on the rasters if I want to. Here are the aerials. So I'll just pick on all of those. And they will also need their files configured. We'll put those in so we can see those drop right down in on the surface that we have if we need to see that surface in the aerial. Alright, so we can go back to home. And if we want to see that information, we can turn layers off and on. We want to see that so we can connect to other things if we wish. Now that we have the aerials and the surface in here, I'm going to go ahead and put the land use map in here. So again, that's just going back to our shape files. Here's our zoning map or land use map. Drag and drop that in, and we have to configure this as well. This will be configured as coverage area. I'm going to give it a name based off the layer so we can tell which one's which. So now the geolocation is the state plane coordinate system. We'll drape it onto the surface that's, that we have already in here. Maybe give it a tooltip of name. And we'll go over and refresh. Go back and configure it again and go ahead and give it a basic default style with just some grass. You got some gravel in there too. So what we could do with this is look at this information and say, well, that's not quite what we want. So we could take it and look at some other materials here, maybe some land cover, and say, well, maybe this is open space. So we got the residential areas. Maybe that's going to be the manicure type grass, so we can drag and drop those on here as well. Do some things like that. Now we've got all the land use patterns stylized the way that we want them to. Now that we have our land configured the way that we want to, let's go ahead and insert our roadway. So I'm just going to drag and drop our shapefile for our roads into that. And we'll also have to configure it. So name of it with a name and description this time. We have a type as a feature attribute inside of our shapefile or object data. Geolocation, the coordinate system, we will drape it on top of the surface that's there. I have to tell it they are roads, and then we'll look at the tooltips, and I'll do the tooltip here, percent, name, and also description. So we'll look at roads that are in here, and I needed to do one more thing. So notice that how I forgot to stylize our roads. They are here by basically just roads, but we can stylize them all to look a certain way to start off with. So look at the style here and say, well, maybe they are all a sidewalk with green space to start out with. So you can see all of our roads are now imported or connected to in the file here. So going back to the roads, maybe based off of the road types, like for this example here, you can see that this is 3rd Avenue, this is Northern Boulevard. So maybe if we wanted the boulevards to look like boulevards and the avenues to maybe just have sidewalks with lampposts, we could do that by using style rules. We can go to the roadway here, look at the roads, define an avenue rule. We'll say description equal avenue. So I have that set. Now we'll go in and define our avenues here. So maybe there's sidewalks with lampposts through there. So we have that one, and let's go ahead and define another one for a boulevard. So this rule will also be description will equal, we'll get the values here and say that should be boulevard. And tell it this will look like, let's see, the palms, let's see with fall hardwood. We'll just commit these and then refresh. So based off of the rules, you can see that we've got the hardwoods in here. So there's our boulevard and our avenue based off of our rules that we have here. Go ahead and go back to a home view and get ready for the next to be importing some buildings. Alright, so now that we have our roads in there, so we'll connect to our buildings. So I'll just drag and drop the buildings in. This time I'll do a little bit some different. So we'll say that the name here is going to be type, and notice that the roof height, we can change all these different things by based off the number of floors if we wanted to do something like that. So we can multiply it and say, well, whatever the height of the building is, we can do some formulas in here if we want to do that. Look at the source, and we will drape these on the surface, so these buildings will go in and have some shape to them. I will do, let's do the name for a tooltip here. Next, I'm going to look at a script. It has a default script in here, and it will have a default height, but I'm going to add a script. So if you know some Java scripting, you can apply some scripts in here. So I'm going to close and refresh that. So what that script does is basically just automate some of the building style stuff for me. Kind of does some random generalization stuff. But for example, if we didn't like the way that that looks, we can go over to the style palettes and look at the facade. And maybe we say, well, that's going to be concrete and glass there. So maybe it looks like this Hamlet building. So we can take and drag and drop some things onto there. And do the same thing for the other ones if we want to. We can also take the buildings if we choose to edit them and drag them up a little bit so we can change the height. So we've got a pretty good base of our conceptual model laid out now. So what if we want to, add some things on the fly to get a more realistic approach of what we may be doing in here? So maybe if I zoom in and look at a couple things, what if we want a road that's going to tie in from this intersection here and kind of snake down through and connect over at this point? With the InfraWorks 2014, if you have the own subscription, you have these ability to create roads, which is basically the same type of roads that we already have in there, but we also can design roads. So you notice the difference for these latter 4 icons over here, they all have design roads in front of them, but the other ones just create roads. The reason we have the design roads in here is because if we go in and start designing, Let me go back to the kind of plan view here. When we start designing and we click off of, you see now that we've got this kind of the black line, and we can also lay out curves by design. So where's the curve option? So maybe if I want a radius of 250 foot and say, well, I want to put something out here to where we start dragging out. So notice when I where it will allow that 250-foot radius, that's where I get that blue line or a blue arc graphic that shows up. So there's that 250-foot radius. So we can go in here and place that. So notice when I click the other PI point, so we can get another 250-foot radius in there. So I'm just going to kind of zoom and pan this around. So maybe we do this and connect this down, and I'm just going to double click to connect. So we should have our road designed in here, what we just laid out. So what's great about that is we can do a couple things for optimization for it. So we can select that and look at the optimize tab here, so we can do some vertical optimization. This is required for you to use your cloud credits. So how many credits do you have? You have to check that out. So it's here. You click here to check if you're signed into the cloud. Take you out to a website so you can do that. But we can also look at the profile view of that, so we can modify some of the things if we need to modify the grade in and grade it out between the PIs, where we can maximize or minimize the curve through there if we need to do that. So I can right click here and add a PVI, raise it up, lower. You can see it change up in the view. One of the interesting things that you can do, as long as you have two design roads, you start designing this second road here off of the first one. So maybe we look back at the curvature for this and we set some smaller radii. Connect that up so it comes flush and automatically gives us the turnouts. But what happens here is when you have two design roads, notice the highlighted features here. When you click on this intersection for an edit, it knows that this is an intersection now. So now you can design intersections in InfraWorks R2. So here we can go in and tell it what size vehicle that we want in there, and look at some of the curve options. So we could right click on this and look at the curve. So maybe that radius is supposed to be a 45-foot radius, so you can type in there and increase it and watch our design change. So we can go in there and change this to maybe that's supposed to be 25. So we could do some things like that if we needed to do that. We can also change the type of the return itself. So if it's supposed to be like the 3 centered arcs, you can do that. Now what about adding some more realistic effects in here? So again, go back to design, and I'm going to clear everything that I have selected and maybe insert what we call city furniture. So the city furniture can be different types of model objects. So we've got people here. We've got vehicles, so we can add vehicle to the model. So maybe if we want this, maybe then an Audi A8, and we can just double click place, or you can do a string of them if you wish. And I'm just going to click on this and change it around so you can see our car that's placed in here on the roadway. So again, we can go back to the create and insert some other city furniture if we need to. Maybe people. We've got a guy standing here, and take and rotate him around. With some visual effects, you can also change the time of day. So you can do some shadow analysis, or not even only the time, but also the date. Change the time of the day. light intensity, wind direction, if you can see the dynamic wind flow in the background, so I can increase the wind speed, so hopefully you can see the clouds rolling in the background. Cloud coverage, increase the clouds. Decrease. So what about looking at getting some of this design layout stuff that we have in the InfraWorks and getting it out to Civil 3D so we can do some design? So going up to the application menu, I'm just going to do an export IMX. And what do I want to get out of here? So maybe I just want to get a couple things I can choose by a polygon, and maybe there's just one road that I want to get out, so I start drawing a polygon around the information that I want to get out of here. We can do the entire model if we want. So target coordinate system, I'm going to change that to the coordinate system that we have. Where I want to save this out to, so that's going to be back out into my project folder. Export that out and open up Civil 3D. Alright, so here I've got Civil 3D open. I'm ready to import that IMX. So on the Insert tab, here is Import IMX. So I'm just going to go out and browse to our file. So that's going to be under here. There's the export that we exported out. So I'm going to choose Open. So you can see all the information that we have in here. And yeah, it looks a little funky. So what we have is a couple different surfaces in there. So with that, we'll look at the surface name. So really, the only thing that I'm working with this is I'm just going to go ahead and set all of these surfaces that we have to this style. I'm just going to say maybe no display for now. Looks like there's another surface there, so there's another one. I'm going to set no display for that. So really, the only thing I'm worried about right now is just this road here. So notice that the information that you import in from InfraWorks, that I have all these PI locations on that alignment. So we can keep that the way that it is, and that's fine for now, so we can design off of it. Alright, so I've gone back and turned on the existing ground surface for this 3rd Avenue. So what I'm going to do now is I've also got the alignment labeled just so we can see some stationing if that matters. This is the default stationing from InfraWorks. I'm going to do a surface profile from the existing ground from InfraWorks. I'm going to draw it in profile view. Not that it matters unless we want to design on it. I'm just going to go out and place it in the view. There it is. I'm also going to create an assembly, or just look at some of the common assemblies that we have in here. So I'm just going to insert a basic one in here. Basic assembly or typical section roadway that's going to be here. So now I'm going to create a corridor based off of that. So there's the surface, there's the assembly. We're going to target the existing ground, go in and create the corridor. Corridor created here. Maybe we only want to create it up to that first intersection road, so we're going to go up and slide this back up here a little bit. Take care of that, and let's take a look at our corridor in 3D and see if there's any issues here. Appears to be okay, other than a triangulation between point to point. That seems to be okay. Maybe we'll be able to take care of that with the surface. So we'll go ahead and select that and go into the properties and create finished ground surface for that. So I'm just going to call this FG 3rd Avenue for that surface, and go ahead and give it a boundary as well. So looking at the surfaces there, so the surface property should be in 2 and 10 design for that. See if we see any contours. There's a couple. So now we've got the contours for that. So if this is our design, from now we can go out and do output and export an IMX. Use the export function. And one quick thing is I need to save the drawing before I use the IMX export. So we'll export that again. It has saved the file to this So here's the file right here with the IMX, and we'll take that back into InfoWorks. So back in InfoWorks. Data sources, we'll use an IMX. There's the from there. So what do we want to put in here? So maybe we want to put both, maybe the roads and the surfaces in there. And we have to go in and configure both of those. So you see that roads from the InfoWorks roads is the one that we're trying to get here. So it is the roads. What do we want to use for this modeling configuration? The geolocation, the source, maybe drape or don't drape, or maybe we want to set the elevation for that road. So we'll go ahead and look at after we do these common things in here. So maybe what style is it going to be? We can go ahead and close and refresh for that and see what happens with our new roadway here. So you can see a little bit these different styles that's through here. So maybe we just take that 3rd Avenue road that's already there, what we have, so we can see the styles it's importing from Civil 3D. So we've got that part in. So maybe we go back and configure this a little bit for the roads, and maybe the corridor regions, we can turn that off there. So we just get the plain regions through there like that. Let's go back and configure it again. And we also need to get the terrain from that. We need to configure that so it can get that elevation. So what surfaces do we want to import through there? We've already got these others, the ground transportation, so maybe we just turn those 3 off and we only want that 3rd Avenue that's going to be there. So maybe we want to set that to be the elevation. And it should be close because we use the existing ground to begin with anyway. I think down here on the other side is where we should have that ditch through there a little bit. The final model, after everything's been connected to and stylized, you can see all the different buildings that we have in here. We've even inserted the buildings or the houses and apartments the same way that we did the other buildings and stylized them as well. We've got the roads in here, the trees, and all these different things. So now maybe it's time to do some presentation type things. So we can go over to storyboards and play a couple sequences through here. So there may be a fly around, so we can click on that and go in and play. This is kind of like creating a flip book, if you will. You create a couple different paths and animations for it. It's not to where you animate the application. It's more like you animate the camera. So can't make the people walk efficiently, but you can animate the camera to go around the people when they're standing there. So that's one of them there. We can stop that one. So maybe there's a new proposal here, new view, maybe a different sequence. These different ones that you can do. You can also add some notes to things if you wish to add notes, some captions to them. This next example of conceptual planning, we'll be looking at Civil 3D with a model that's already created. Let me go open up one of the files in question here. So if we look at the model that we have, basically it's just a surface that's created with a corridor model. If we take a look at the corridor, you'll see that it is just a pretty basic corridor, really nothing special to it. What we may want to do is do something about not only the 3D modeling, but let's do the 4D and possibly even the 5D. So even though that this is a corridor from beginning all the way to the end, what we want to do is realistically or somewhat realistically depict how this road will be constructed. So maybe the sections are every 500 foot apart. So the 4D will constitute the time aspect as far as the construction and modeling goes, and then the 5D will incorporate the cost. To get started with doing that, what we're going to do is to extract some of the corridor solids off of this, but I'm just going to close this file and we'll look at it in Navisworks to begin with. So I'm going to go open that. So now that the model is imported, what we want to do is look at a couple things and how we want to select things inside of Navisworks. We look at the selection tree and say, how are we going to select different things? So maybe we go in and select by geometry. So when we pick on certain things, you can see that we select just that piece that we're interested in there. So let's look at the selection tree here. So you notice that I have that EG that's selected there, and there's a couple other surfaces in here for the new road with the datum and the EG with the road datum subtracted out of it. So with this one, what we'll do is go up and choose hide. Either we can do it from the ribbon, or we could right click on it and choose hide here. So we'll just hit that. So now you can see that we've got just one surface, so it doesn't overlap or wash out the corridor design there. So panning and zooming around inside of Navisworks is a little bit different. So if we pick on an object and then use the mouse wheel by either holding shift and then pressing the mouse wheel down, you will see that we can pivot about that object, or we could pick it and then zoom in about that object so we can go around certain pieces if we want to. So I can zoom in about that, about where I picked, and then we can pivot around that, use the orbit tool. So we can see a couple things there. Hitting escape will deselect the any objects that we have selected. All right, so the next thing that we want to do is to get Civil 3D and Navisworks to communicate together. So what we have to do is open up Civil 3D and type a command called nwload. So nwload will enable Navisworks to communicate with Civil 3D. So it says it's Navisworks ready. So now what we can do is go back to Navisworks and select our geometry here and use the item tools. Either go to switch back, or we can right click on and go to switch back here, so it will switch back to Civil 3D. It will take just a minute to do that. So let's look at Civil 3D file that we have here. Notice that it takes us into the same view orientation that we were in inside of Navisworks. So maybe we want to change from the 2D wireframe, or either go back to the top view in here. So what we're looking at doing is extracting the corridor in different pieces so we can get that more realistic kind of animation that we're looking for here. So on the toolbox, if we go to the miscellaneous items or miscellaneous utilities, we've got the corridor solids. So we want to extract that. We can start this by double clicking on it. So now we get the create corridor solids wizard here. So we'll go in and extract these solids, and we can pick by baseline or pick by a region. With the create solids from corridor, you look at the only corridor that we have in the drawing that we have to select, and how we define these new solid options or these different regions. I'm going to right click on it and choose add region. And we can go in and it's kind of like split region for the corridor modeling part of it. So specify the region start point. So I'm just going to either use the slide line, or you can just type in 0 to start. And so where's the next station that we want to go to begin or end this region? So I'm just going to type in 500 to end that. So you'll see that we get this first region that's named here. Okay. I'm going to right click on this and add another region. And here it'd just be 500 to 1,000. So 500 there for the start, and the end will be 1,000. And I'm just going to do this all the way to the end. So now once I have all of the regions set here, so we look at all these different regions that we just split up. What I want to do is look at naming these corridor solids appropriately. So what I'm going to do is use a naming template, so that way that each one of these corridor solids has their own name associated with each part. So here what we're going to do is choose the region name to be a suffix for each one of these regions, so it have the station as far as the region is looking for there. So if I put that into the beginning and apply that, so you'll see that each one has the construction name to it. So if I maximize that, you see it's got the construction name to it, or the region name, the subassemblies. Now we can click on the next portion here, and I'm going to do the swept solids, so it's a more accurate representation of the solids itself. and going to save this to a new drawing in our set here. I'm just going to call this dialog boxes in my other monitor. So just drag that over and just click on create solids. So let's just check out that 3D solid file that we just created there. So we open up the extracted corridor solids. Take that a second. We need to just zoom extents. We can spin this around using orbit and look at the information in 3D. So you'll see that it is 3D solids going through there for each individual part. So we could change the style or the view style of it. It's maybe a realistic so that everything looks kind of shaded. So we can see the information, what we're looking for there. And notice that when we click on a certain piece that it is only about or approximately 500 foot in length. So each one of these sections are broken up so we can use that in the timeliner inside of Navisworks. Alright, so now that we've extracted the corridor solids, now we can look at getting those solids into Navisworks and start doing some timelining and showing some 4D and possibly some 5D. So just go and open up those solids here. There's the road solids that we just created, and by default it may look like you don't really see anything inside of Navisworks. If you change it into an isometric, you'll see that there's our layout here, and then from that what I'm going to do is go over to the home tab and choose timeliner. So it's going to populate this with a timeliner, and what we need to do is get tasks added to our timeliner associated with the different regions for the corridor. So there is an auto add task. You can do this manually if you want, but we're going to choose the auto to choose based off of all of those different regions that you see here. And since we've added all of these regions, we could directly go over to simulate. Again, it looks like nothing's here because this is at the start of the project. We hit play and start simulating. You'll see that it starts adding pieces in from the outside, from the curb, and then into the road based off of those charts and what comes in the order there. Now, if you see that there's a gap right here, it's just based off of the things that are ordered in the list and what times were associated with it. Just because we gave it an auto doesn't mean it's going to automatically do it perfect each time. So one of those things that we got to look at is possibly scroll down to the bottom of the list here. Notice that region 5 is starting after region 3000. So we've got to either pick and choose these, select all of them by holding the shift key down, and we can move this up in the list if we need to move it up. But if we just move it up, we've also got to change the dates for that too. The planned start and the planned end. So just because we move it up doesn't actually change the date. We have to change those manually ourselves. So just that we see that, what we're going to do is just go ahead and just let's pick the last row. I'm going to pick the top row here, and I'm just going to remove all those tasks. And then now I'm going to go use a data source, because one of the things that we could use is either use a Microsoft Project or Primavera to use those Gantt charts for our construction schedule. Here I don't have that installed, so I'm just going to use a CSV file. So here's a construction schedule for that. And one of the things we got to make sure is make sure that we got these things mapped correctly. So it looks like everything's okay here. And row 1 does contain headings and automatically detect date and time format inside of this chart. So we hit OK there. So now that we have the data source imported in, now we can right click on it and tell it to rebuild a task hierarchy for that. You may get a prompt here for imported data. It's missing some synchronization. It's okay for that for now. Let's go check out the task and see if everything's imported correctly. So you see the Gantt chart that's out here to the side. One of the things that we may want to do is to look at see the cost associated with. See, now nothing actually happens when we hit play, so we got to do some additional configuration for it. And then we're going to choose auto attach using rules. So we're going to auto attach using the column name to the layers, because remember from the layers that we chose for the corridor extracting, we're going to match it to the layers here within the task timeliner. It's going to apply the rules, and you see everything's attached there, so we can just close that out go back and check out our simulation, and we can start seeing everything being built out here. So now let's look at adding some 4D and 5D information to it. So if we go and add the settings on the timeline on the simulate, you'll see that we get the simulation settings and there's some overlay text. So here we've already got the day of the week, so that can get the the time for it. But I'm going to hit Control and Enter and start adding some costs. So maybe we've got material cost. Let's see, cost here. We'll do material. Do the same thing by some control. And let's do labor cost. Also throw another $sign in front of here. Let's hit OK. So what we've got to do before we exit out of this, we also have to add a font to it so we can see this. So I'm just going to apply it to some font so we can see it in the window. So maybe I'll choose Arial rounded, maybe bold. Let's do it 10 point. Hit OK, OK, and let's go back and you'll see that we've got the time up here. Hit play. You'll start seeing it go out from day, and then the cost as the cost starts building, as the construction starts building. All right, so here we have the same project, and we've got some utilities, maybe some water and sewer, storm drainage, and any other type of utilities you may have. So we've got design in Civil 3D, and maybe we're working with some outside sources or some other municipalities that have these other line works in here. So maybe we want to take this into Navisworks to do some clash detection and figure out if we got any problems with the design. So with Navisworks, I'm just going to go ahead and close this drawing here. This is the utilities drawing, and just go back into Navisworks, and I'm just going to go open that DWG. So there's that utilities file. And there's a lot of stuff that we're going to have to do with this just so we can see everything in it the way that we would like to see it. We know that we can select on it and then just orbit around, and we're probably going to lose it a little bit. So let's go back into the home here and zoom in to our file. Lost it a little bit, so just going to find this thing here. There we go. And just so that doesn't happen again, I'm just going to create a viewpoint here so we can go back to it next time that they happen to us. So what we need to do is actually see all this line work that's in here. So there's some things that we can do to as far as stylizing the model inside of Navisworks. So it may be to either go to the rendering part of it when you select an option, or sorry, select an object here, whether it's geometry or layers. Go into render and maybe either apply some materials to it if you want to apply materials, or you could do things like select them and then hide certain pieces if that's what you want to do, so you can see these entities in here. Or if you would like to select them and possibly do some overrides and do some transparency so you can see the entities through those. So now we can see the line work between it, or sorry, underneath that surface. So if we zoom in and look a little bit, let me pan this over so you can see a little bit of the line work that's going through there. Let me do a little bit more of a transparency where so we can see do it more easily. So now you can see that there's we definitely have a couple clashes through here, but we may have more. I just got lucky by zooming in there. So what we're going to do here is just go into the home tab, and over off to the right there's the clash detective. So going into the clash detective here, and we're just going to pick on the entities that we would like to do the clash on. So first thing we got to do is to add a test, and I'm just going to call it storm. And the test that we want to run is going to be based off of the entities or the geometry in this file. So we're going to run it off of the storm. Storm pipes here will be see if there's any detection between the water pipes. So we'll do that here. And what type of settings do we want to use? So whether it's going to be a hard clash or duplicates, clearances, and things of that sort. The tolerance that you may want to set on it. I'm just going to hit run test. And you'll see that it kind of grays everything out and only shows us the entities in question here. So we've got clash 1 and clash 2. Just showing us that information. Now, one of the good things about this, what we could do is inside of Civil 3D is if we have that Navisworks ready option already set, we could go in and select this pipe here. Just right click on it, hit select, and go into switchback. But before I do that, what if we want to get a report of it? So we get a report of this these detections or these clashes, and what are the contents that you want to report. I'm just going to do the current test and save it to a HTML and choose write report. I'm just going to save it to my report dataset folder here. So the report's saved. Go and open it up, take a look at it. All it is just a very simple report showing us the total number of clashes that we have. It gives us a thumbnail view of what it is, the actual northern eastern location of that clash. So you can send this to whoever's responsible to update that. Now, one of the things they can do after that is if they open this up in Navisworks, or you can, however you want to update that, but back on the results, if we do take this and select it and do switchback, so now we're back into Civil 3D here. We can see the pipe is clashing with the other pipes over here. So maybe if we want to go into 2D wireframe or conceptual, so we can see that. What I've also done in this file is I've created a profile of that crossing entity and went ahead and projected the pipes into it, so we can see the crossing and the interferences that we have there, those clashes. So all I'm going to do here is just show the ability to update certain things. So I'm just going to go in and pick this pipe that's in question and just drop it below these other ones here to see if we get any other clashes within the system. So once I save this file, I'm going to close it and then go back into Navisworks. Once we're back in the Navisworks, I'm going to choose to refresh. It may take it a second to do the refresh here, and hopefully that's going to show us the new file that's dropped there. All right, so the file is updated now, so we can see that there's some indication of what's happening. It says this model or test settings have changed since the last test was run, so we may want to update that. So if we just look in the Navisworks model here, we can see that that pipe is updated, but let's just make sure there's no other clashes. So what we can do here is just rerun the test. So we can see here the status is set to resolve, so it shows the yellow that they're both set there, and there's just the resolve function for it. So that's running the clashes and then updating those clashes inside of Navisworks. Thanks for watching the 2014 Infrastructure Design Suite Conceptual Planning Demonstration with Brian Allen for Imaginet Technologies. If you need more information, please visit imaginet.com or call 1-800-356-9050.